We don't have money because we have an unemployed person in this house.
My mother-in-law spat out, glaring at me. My husband and father-in-law scolded her, but her anger only intensified.
It's because we have a freeloader here that we're broke. Do you realize being a stay-at-home wife is just being unemployed?
She accused me. I was more fed up with my mother-in-law than sad or angry. It had been a year since I moved in with my in-laws, and she had called me unemployed many times before. She just couldn't stand the fact that I was a stay-at-home wife. However, today she seemed to have had an unpleasant experience outside and lashed out at me even more persistently. Then, she dropped a bombshell.
Someone like you doesn't deserve my precious son. The unemployed should just leave.
My husband and father-in-law were shocked, not expecting her to go as far as telling me to leave. As they were about to yell at her, I cheerfully responded.
Yes, gladly.
With a big smile as if I were a pub server, I left her speechless. My husband and father-in-law wore expressions of astonishment. I immediately began preparing to leave the house. I also prepared divorce papers and had my husband sign them. Mother-in-law, I'll submit this divorce form to the city hall. Goodbye, I said, and as I left my in-laws' home, I could hear my mother-in-law's loud laughter from inside. Imagining what would happen next, I couldn't help but smile. You're wrong if you think things will go your way, I murmured as I started walking. My name is Lisa. I'm 30 years old. Ever since I was young, I loved movies and dramas, and after graduating high school, I enrolled in a film school. There, I learned video editing skills and managed to get a job at an advertising agency after graduation. Work was tough, but I enjoyed every day. One day, through work, I met my now husband, Ken. Ken was 2 years older than me, with a generous and attractive aura. We both loved cameras and knew a lot about video editing, so we hit it off immediately. Our relationship evolved from good friends to lovers without either of us explicitly asking. After several years of dating smoothly, one day came. Ken looked at me with a seriousness I had never seen before and said, Lisa, I'm thinking of going back to my hometown to become an independent photographer.
Really? You've decided to go independent?
I had heard from Ken before that he wanted to eventually return to his hometown and start his own business. Yeah. And I want you to come with me. I want you to marry me. Ken said, his serious gaze turning a bit anxious.
Of course. I'd be delighted.
I answered with my biggest smile. Since Ken's hometown was in another state, I would have to quit my current job. Although I felt sad about leaving my job, my desire to support Ken's independence was stronger. More than anything, I understood that being with Ken was my greatest happiness. Thus, Ken and I decided to get married, and I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Ken started working hard every day as an independent photographer. We rented an apartment near his parents' place and lived together while saving money to eventually buy our own home. Even though we lived modestly, our days were peaceful and serene. However, it wasn't long before my mother-in-law suggested we move in with them.
Hey, Lisa and Ken. You're saving up to build your own home, right? Then, why not live with us? It won't cost you rent. There's no need for the two of you to live in an apartment by yourselves. Come live with us,
she said with a smile. Since we had a reasonably good relationship with my in-laws, I was grateful for the offer. However, the idea of moving in together was a bit daunting, and I couldn't immediately agree. I had heard from a friend about their failed experience living with in-laws. It ended in divorce because they couldn't get along with their mother-in-law. Because of this, I wasn't very enthusiastic about my mother-in-law's suggestion. Your offer is, well, appreciated. But, we're still newlyweds, and moving in right away seems a bit much. Besides, both you and Dad are still healthy and don't need care, so there's no reason for us to live together. Ken said, gently declining on my behalf. However, my mother-in-law didn't back down and kept bringing up the idea of living together.
I think it would be so fun to live together every day. I dream about it every night, the four of us enjoying dinner together. When will it become a reality? Come on, let's live together soon. Make my dream come true.
Hearing this repeatedly made me feel guilty for always refusing, and eventually, we agreed to move in with them. Then, my mother-in-law's eyes sparkled with joy, and she was very pleased.
Really? I'm so happy. Lisa, I'm sure we will get along well. We'll share the household chores and help each other out. I look forward to it, thank you.
Seeing how happy my mother-in-law was made me feel good about deciding to live together. After we decided to move in, my mother-in-law, who couldn't wait for us to live together, often called me.
Your room will be on the second floor, in the corner. It gets great sunlight and is just perfect. I've cleaned it thoroughly for you. Wow, thank you so much.
As the move-in date approached, my mother-in-law was very kind to me, and my anxiety gradually disappeared. However, one thing that bothered me was how much my mother-in-law adored Ken. It's natural for a mother to love her son, but sometimes I thought she was a bit overprotective.
Hey Lisa, what's for dinner tonight? Ken works hard every day, so make sure he eats something nutritious. But don't just feed him meat all the time. It has to be balanced. Make sure you support Ken properly. So, what's the menu for tonight? Tell me quickly.
Being bombarded like this made me feel a slight discomfort. Moreover, my mother-in-law often said, I can't wait to live with Ken. It made me wonder if she wanted to live with everyone or just with Ken. However, I told myself it was natural for a mother to want to be with her son and tried not to worry about it too much. Besides, there was nothing else about my mother-in-law that concerned me, so I focused on preparing for the move. And as planned, we started living with my in-laws. At first, sharing household chores with my mother-in-law, we lived peacefully. But soon, my mother-in-law showed her true colors when Ken and my father-in-law were at work, leaving just the two of us at home.
Lisa, how long are you going to hang the laundry? You're so slow. Can't you move any quicker? Once you're done with that, hurry up and finish the dishes. Actually, I'm leaving all the household chores to you today. You're unemployed, so you must have plenty of time, right? Must be nice being unemployed. Make sure you clean thoroughly. Got it.
My mother-in-law rattled off in a rough tone I had never heard before. Are you going out somewhere, mother-in-law? I was very surprised, but tried to remain calm and asked.
Yes. Unlike you, an unemployed person, I'm busy. I'm a career woman, you know. I live my life being busy with all sorts of things every day.
My mother-in-law boasted proudly. Indeed, I had heard that she was a career woman. She used to work for a major trading company, seemingly bustling with work. But that was up until 2 years ago. My mother-in-law is currently 62 and retired at 60, so now she's a full-time housewife. Yet, she mocks me for being unemployed, which makes me wonder what she's thinking. I was puzzled and ended up staying silent. Then, my mother-in-law, seemingly irritated, told me.
What are you zoning out for? Get moving. Hurry up and finish cleaning the floor.
Yes. I managed to say, overwhelmed by her presence, and started doing the housework as she commanded. My mother-in-law constantly criticized the way I did the housework, making me redo the cleaning multiple times.
This is totally unacceptable. You can't say you've cleaned with that kind of effort. Here, do it again, please.
After thoroughly tormenting me to her satisfaction, she left the house with a high-end bag in hand. Alone in the house, I was stunned. From then on, my mother-in-law frequently dumped housework and cleaning tasks on me. She would push these chores onto me and then leave the house dressed in expensive clothes and bags, returning with loads of shopping bags. In front of Ken and my father-in-law, she played the part of a good wife and mother. I considered telling Ken and my father-in-law about how she was treating me. However, I didn't want to upset them, so I found it hard to bring up her true nature. Gradually, my mother-in-law began to openly assign me chores in front of my husband and father-in-law. Ken would often reprimand her. Mom, why do you keep making Lisa do all the housework? We agreed to share the chores. Oh, Ken, don't be so angry. After all, Lisa isn't working. It's only natural for her to do all the housework, cooking, and cleaning. She replied unapologetically, to which my father-in-law scolded her.
You're not working either, are you? What are you even saying?
His point was valid. My mother-in-law, faced with his remark, grimaced and fell silent. My father-in-law is 3 years younger than my mother-in-law, making him 59. Therefore, he's nearing retirement but is still actively working. He worked at a publishing house, and he had a gentle personality. He's always been very kind to me. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law started frequently bragging about her days working at a major trading company when it was just the two of us. She probably didn't talk about it in front of my father-in-law and Ken because she didn't want to hear, "You're not working now, are you?" From her tone, it was clear she took great pride in her career at the trading company. And she seemed to enjoy belittling my career history to feel better about herself.
You know, I graduated from a prestigious private university and joined a trading company. I was a star from my first year there. Always the ace, always praised by my bosses. I can't even count how many times I was recognized within the company.
That's impressive, I would say, which only made her more smug and look down on me even more.
Right? Compared to that, isn't your life so dull and boring? Well, it seems like you don't have the capability to shine in society anyway. Being unemployed suits you, I guess. You're nothing like me.
Yeah. Her condescending attitude was getting on my nerves, but knowing that my husband and father-in-law were on my side was a consolation. Before my mother-in-law could say anything, I would quickly finish my chores and retreat to my room, living a life where I minimized my time with her as much as possible. I just let her trading company glory days stories slide off me. Eventually, I might have become mentally stronger because when her bragging seemed to drag on, I'd find an excuse to retreat to my room. My mother-in-law seemed desperate to brag to me, but lately, she seemed annoyed because I'd just go straight to my room. However, I pretended not to notice and went on with my days. It was almost a year since we started living together. During dinner with the four of us, my mother-in-law suddenly sulked and said, "Today, Mrs. Turner bragged to me." "Mrs. Turner, that's your friend, right?" Ken asked, and my mother-in-law nodded, then started talking gruffly. "Yeah, a neighbor. Apparently, her family went on a hot spring trip recently. They stayed at a luxury inn with a grand open-air bath in their room. The food was great too, they had such tender meat that it melted in their mouths. She said it was a blissful trip." That sounds nice," my father-in-law commented, and my mother-in-law's face twisted in annoyance as she snapped at him.
"Not nice at all. Were you even listening? I was bragged to. It's as if she was saying we couldn't afford to stay at such a luxury inn. I felt so miserable. Why should I have to feel this way? That's a bit of a persecution complex, isn't it? Mom, calm down for a second."
Ken tried to soothe her, but my mother-in-law wouldn't stop.
It's not a persecution complex. How can you not understand how I felt at that moment? It's the first time I've ever felt so humiliated. It's so frustrating.
And then, my mother-in-law finally turned her frustration towards me.
"We don't have money because there's an unemployed person in this house."
My mother-in-law spat out, glaring at me.
"Mom, what are you talking about?"
Ken immediately tries to stop her, but my mother-in-law's anger only escalates.
"We're broke because we have one deadweight here. Hey, you haven't said a word, but you know it's about you, right? Why don't you say something? Do you realize that being a full-time housewife is just being unemployed?"
My mother-in-law accuses me, but honestly, I was fed up. I was infuriated that she, being unemployed herself, was harassing me for being the same. I couldn't hold back and retorted. "You're unemployed right now too, aren't you, mother-in-law?" "What?" She was taken aback by my response, her eyes widening in surprise. Her face quickly turned red with anger, and she yelled at me.
"Someone like you doesn't deserve our precious Ken. The unemployed should just leave."
Ken and my father-in-law shout at her, but I loudly interject over their voices.
Yes, gladly.
With a big smile as if I were a pub server, my response leaves my mother-in-law dumbfounded. Ken and my father-in-law are also shocked. I immediately begin to clear my dishes, finish the washing up, and start preparing to leave the house. My mother-in-law, watching me, says mockingly,
Looks like you're really leaving. Ah, what a relief. Divorcing such a wife is the right choice, Ken. Mom, stop it.
Ken is furious, scolding my mother-in-law. My father-in-law also says, apologize to Lisa right now, but my mother-in-law just sulks, offering no apology. I pack my belongings into my suitcase without speaking to anyone. Ken looks at me anxiously. Despite the tension, my mother-in-law, oblivious to the atmosphere, demands, hey. You're just washing your own dishes. Take ours down and do the washing up too. Naturally, I ignore her, but Ken and my father-in-law's scolding fills the house. The next morning, after I had packed my bags, I told Ken something in my room. Then, Ken and I signed the divorce papers I had printed out from my computer. Mother-in-law, I'll submit this divorce form to the city hall. Goodbye, I said, and then I left my in-laws' house. I could hear my mother-in-law's loud laughter coming from inside the house. She had no idea what was about to happen to her. A smile crept onto my face as I muttered, "You're mistaken if you think things will go your way." Then, as I had declared, I submitted the divorce papers to the city hall, and that was how my divorce from Ken became official. Half a year later, I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. Hello? As soon as I answered, my mother-in-law started ranting over my voice. Finally got through. Until now, every time I called you, all I got was a busy tone, it never connected. What was that all about? Ah, I had set your number to be blocked. We're strangers now, after all. Ever since leaving my in-laws' house, I had blocked my mother-in-law's number, only unblocking it moments before she called. I was slightly surprised she called so soon after being unblocked. Blocked me. Don't mess with me. More importantly, what have you done with my precious Ken? Ken has disappeared. Did you do something to him? Even though you're divorced, you still have feelings for Ken, don't you? My mother-in-law was fuming with anger, shouting loudly. It had been a while since I heard my mother-in-law's voice, but she sounded as lively as ever. Could you please lower your voice a bit? My ears hurt.
Shut up. Where are you now, anyway?
My mother-in-law continued to shout excitedly, regardless of my request for her to calm down. In contrast, I calmly informed her. I've built a house and moved. I just finished moving in a little while ago. What? Her momentum halted abruptly, and she fell silent. But then she snapped back to reality and started yelling again.
What are you talking about, being unemployed? Where would an unemployed person get the money for that? What, a house? Sure, you talked about saving up for a home, but there's no way you, now single and unemployed, could afford to build a house.
I have an annual income of $320,000. The fact I revealed made my mother-in-law gasp in shock, even over the phone. You've always ridiculed me for being unemployed, but actually, I make videos. I'm what you'd call a YouTuber. A YouTuber? Lisa, you? My mother-in-law asks in disbelief. Yes, that's right. I make videos about beauty products and trending items. I've been told my editing skills are good, and thanks to that, I now earn an annual income of $320,000. Indeed, after resigning from my job and marrying Ken, I started making videos to utilize my editing skills. It was going well from the start, but I never imagined I'd earn this much. Such a thing. That was it. You were always holed up in your room because you were making videos. Well, that's, yes, partly for making videos. The main reason I started staying in my room was to escape from my mother-in-law's boasting, but it's true I wanted to carve out as much time for video creation as possible. What the? You could have told me sooner if you were making so much. Ugh, I thought you were just an unemployed person without any income, so I said some terrible things. But if you're earning that much, that's a different story. Hiding such a big thing, Lisa, you're so mean. My mother-in-law's tone changed completely upon hearing about my income, as if she had flipped a switch.
Hey, now that we're on the subject, how about you gift me a trip? Of course, to a luxury inn. Book a more expensive inn than the hot spring trip Mrs. Turner went on. Then I can finally show her up.
Mrs. Turner, that's the name of my mother-in-law's friend. She had been upset about Mrs. Turner bragging to her on the day I was told to leave the house, and it seems she's still holding a grudge. To such a mother-in-law, I sighed and told her.
Why don't you go with the money you earned from the prestigious trading company yourself? What? What do you mean by that? Even though you earn so much, you're too stingy. How greedy! Just hurry up and book the luxury inn.
The greedy one is my mother-in-law, for sure. It's somewhat admirable how she can demand such things from me after all she's done. Regardless of what you say, I have no intention of giving you any money. And about Ken, I'm currently living with him.
What? You two are divorced, aren't you?
My mother-in-law exclaimed in a ludicrous voice. Yes, we were divorced, but we got remarried. Ken moved in with me. We had made such an arrangement from the beginning. And married in. Actually, on the day I left my in-laws' house, Ken and I had discussed and decided to get divorced and then remarry, with him moving in with me. Ken was relieved to know I had no intention of being apart from him. I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. I've already talked to them, so Ken, when you're ready, come to my parents' house.
Okay, I understand. I'm really sorry about my mom.
Ken was downcast, but since Ken and my father-in-law had always defended me from my mother-in-law, I was grateful to them. Then, Ken lied to my mother-in-law about having a long-term shoot and moved to my parents' house with only what he needed. My mother-in-law seemed unable to fully grasp the truth I had told her. I couldn't get through to Ken either, all I heard was a busy tone. Did he also block me? Why? My mother-in-law was bewildered. Yes, that's right. Ken has cut ties with you, mother-in-law. I had blocked you too, but now that the move is complete, I've unblocked you for a moment. I thought you might be looking for Ken's whereabouts, so I wanted to let you know. Of course, I won't tell you the address. Ken will continue to live with me, so please stop looking for him. Such a thing. After a few seconds of silence, my mother-in-law suddenly shouted. That's all lies. Are you threatening Ken? There's no way he would cut ties with me. My mother-in-law refused to believe my words. As I was wondering what to do, Ken came over and took the phone. Mom. It's me.
Ken. Oh, good. So, it was a lie that you were cutting ties with me, right? You're being threatened by Lisa, aren't you? Tell me your address, I'll come to pick you up.
My mother-in-law's pleading voice leaked through the phone. No, everything Lisa said is true.
I can't forgive the way you treated her, and I've decided to cut ties with you. From now on, you are a stranger to me. Goodbye, Ken said and handed the phone back to me.
I spoke to my mother-in-law again. Do you understand now, mother-in-law? Such a thing. My mother-in-law seemed to be sobbing.
Then, I'll hang up now. Wait! Don't hang up yet! I accept cutting ties, but please, could you lend me some money?
My mother-in-law appealed desperately. I was appalled that she was still talking about money at this point.
What? As I said, I'm not booking any luxury inn for you. It's not about that. Actually, Dad found out I've been shopping a lot with his credit card, and now I'm on an allowance. $600 a month is unbearable. It's gone in a moment.
Ah, so you were splurging, mother-in-law. Dad was worried about the savings decreasing, so I told him. When we were living together, I mentioned to him that you often came home with bags from brand stores. Ken and I have been in constant contact with my father-in-law all this time. My father-in-law, feeling bad about the trouble his wife had caused, even helped with the moving expenses to our new home. Recently, He confided in me that the savings in the household account had been disappearing, so I informed him about the frequent shopping sprees of my mother-in-law I had witnessed while living with them. Despite being unemployed, my mother-in-law always came home carrying loads of shopping bags, which I found suspicious.
You told him on me. What have you done? Dad got furious, put me on an allowance, and now I have to record every purchase in the household ledger. If I don't, he's threatening divorce.
It's your fault for spending recklessly, mother-in-law. You don't even have an income right now. Besides, if you're getting an allowance of $600, you should be grateful. You ought to thank Dad. Please, reflect on your actions, mother-in-law. As I spoke with exasperation, my mother-in-law began making excuses.
But when I was working, I could buy anything I wanted, so I just continued spending the same way after I retired. Plus, when I go shopping with my friends, I have to buy brand items so I don't lose to them.
I don't understand. Why do you need to put on such a facade? I asked, bewildered by her logic.
It's not a facade. You see, I was an elite working at a major trading company. I deserve to own expensive items.
I have nothing more to discuss with you, mother-in-law. I'm going to hang up now. After listening to her absurd reasoning, I ended the call, feeling a headache coming on. Just before hanging up, I thought I heard a pained cry from her. Later, according to my father-in-law, my mother-in-law couldn't stand the strict financial control. She secretly used his credit card for expensive purchases. When he found out, he declared divorce. My mother-in-law begged and pleaded, but his decision was firm, and he didn't change his mind about the divorce. Having no choice but to accept, my mother-in-law was kicked out and moved into a cheap apartment. Since then, she's been reluctantly working part-time to make ends meet. But being ordered around by much younger bosses has been a huge source of stress for her, given her high pride. Since then, my mother-in-law has called me numerous times. The calls were always either asking for money or complaining about her part-time job.
Listen, Lisa. That younger female boss of mine, she complains about things I do with good intentions. Telling me not to do unnecessary things. Isn't that cheeky? How dare she speak to me, an elite, like that?
Sigh, could you please stop calling me? We're strangers now. Even as I clearly expressed my frustration, my mother-in-law paid no heed.
Come on, it's just a little favor. And, well, could you lend me some money, even just a little? Just a bit. You earn a lot, Lisa, so you must have plenty of money, right? Please.
No, I've declined multiple times. When I responded coldly, my mother-in-law started to fake cry dramatically.
That's so cruel, Lisa. I hate living like this. Why did this happen to me? I was supposed to enjoy a graceful and leisurely retirement. My life is a mess now. Ugh.
It's all the result of your own actions. Unless you realize that, I don't think your life will ever get better. Please don't call me ever again. Saying this, I hung up and blocked my mother-in-law's number again. I have no idea what's become of her since, but I hope she reflects on her past behavior. Meanwhile, thanks to the success of my video streaming, Ken and I have started an advertising company. With the savings we had accumulated, we've been able to live without financial worries. Additionally, we've recently found out that I'm pregnant.
Ken and I, blessed and congratulated by my father-in-law and my parents, are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new little family member.